the wife he never deserved. Every family has a story they don't talk about at dinner. A chapter that lives in the quiet spaces between what they say and what they mean. A season that changed everything, how they love, how they trust, who they become. This is one of those stories. It starts the way most hard stories do, not with a single dramatic moment, but with a slow and quiet unraveling. Two people who loved each other, who built something real together, discovering that love alone sometimes isn't enough to hold a marriage together. It ends with a 17-year-old standing at a podium in front of her entire graduating class, placing her open hand to her chest, looking out at her family, and telling them she is proud. Every single thing that happened in between is why that moment means what it means. This is their story, and it is real. Before the hard part, there was this. A family, a mother, a father, two daughters. One a teenager already navigating the complicated terrain of high school, the other still young enough to believe that her parents could fix anything. A home full of noise and laughter, and the particular chaos that comes with raising girls. They had built something together, something real. The kind of life that looks, from the outside, like it has always been easy, but that two people constructed brick by brick through years of showing up for each other. The mother carried the household the way so many women carry things, completely, quietly, and without asking for credit. She worked. She organized. She made sure the girls had what they needed, not just physically but emotionally. She was the infrastructure of that family. The father loved his family. That part was never in question. He worked hard. He showed up. He wanted the best for his daughters. Underneath the surface of their life together, though, something had been shifting for a long time. The distance that grows between two people when communication breaks down. When two people stop being partners and start being roommates. When the love is still there, but the connection has quietly gone somewhere else. They tried. That matters, and it deserves to be said. They did not arrive at the decision to divorce quickly or carelessly. Eventually, though, they arrived there. And now came the hardest part. Not telling each other, but telling their daughters. There is no good way to tell your children that the world they have always known is about to change shape. Every parent who has ever sat their children down for that conversation knows exactly what the air feels like in the room before the words come out. The way children sense something is coming before you say a single word. The way a small child looks at her parents' faces and starts reading them like a map. The older daughter was 15, old enough to understand, old enough to have already felt the distance growing in the house, old enough to absorb the news with that particular teenage stillness that is not the absence of feeling, but the presence of too much feeling all at once. The younger daughter was 8, old enough to know something was wrong, young enough to not yet have the words for what she was losing. The parents sat together and delivered the news together. They made promises they fully intended to keep, that both girls would always have both parents, that the love in this family was not going anywhere, that this was a change in structure and not a change in care. Children hear those promises. They hold on to them, and over the next 2 years, they would test every single one. What happened next, no one saw coming. It did not arrive as a single dramatic event. It arrived the way most disruption does, wearing a familiar face, walking through a door that was already open, carrying a name the family already knew. The mother had a sister. What came next would divide this family's life into a clear and permanent before and after. It arrived on the most ordinary morning imaginable. It was a school day, the kind of ordinary Tuesday you never remember afterward. Except when something happens on it that you never forget. The younger daughter was at school. The school had supervision in place. Staff members stood watch over the children the way they always did, present, attentive, doing their jobs. 2 of them stood together watching the yard, sharing the ordinary kind of conversation that happens 1,000 times a day on school grounds across the country. The children played. The sun was out. Everything looked exactly the way it was supposed to look. And then everything happened at once. A woman, someone no one recognized, walked straight toward the younger daughter with a confidence that made her look like she belonged there. She called the child's name. The child froze. The woman smiled, reached for her hand, and said, "Come on, sweetheart. Your mom sent me." A teacher heard it. She stepped forward. The woman tightened her grip. The teacher shouted. A security guard ran. The woman moved fast, too fast, dragging the child toward a waiting car. The younger daughter screamed. The woman shoved her into the back seat. The door slammed. The engine roared. The car sped away. The school called. The mother didn't remember the drive. Only the panic. Teachers crying. The principal shaking. The security guard repeating, "I tried. I tried. I tried." Her ex-husband arrived seconds later. Pale. Frantic. Desperate. They stood together in that parking lot. Two people who had separated their lives as carefully as they could, now shoulder to shoulder in the place where their daughter had just been taken. Whatever the divorce had cost them, it had never cost them this. They were still her parents. They were still one unit where she was concerned. And right now that unit was breaking open. Police arrived. Footage pulled. Alerts issued. Trafficking units contacted. Highways searched. Hotels checked. 72 hours of terror. 72 hours of watching the phone. Of not sleeping. Of jumping at every ring and dying a little each time it wasn't the call they needed. 72 hours of holding each other up across a divorce neither of them had fully healed from, united by the only thing that had always mattered more than any of it. Their daughter. Then, just after midnight, we found her. The mother didn't remember sitting down. She didn't remember who caught her. She only remembered the sound that came out of her, something between a sob and a prayer, and the feeling of her legs giving way beneath her. The kind of relief that lives in the body before it reaches the mind. She was safe. Shaken, but safe. They drove to her. No conversation. No planning. They moved together the way people move when the only thing that exists is the destination. When they walked through that door and saw her, small and wrapped in a blanket someone had found for her, her eyes wide and searching, the mother crossed the room in 3 steps. She held her daughter so tightly, and for so long that the officers in the room quietly turned away to give them that. The father stood in the doorway for a moment, watching. Then he walked over and wrapped his arms around both of them. The 3 of them stayed like that, mother, father, daughter, in a hotel room that had been the worst place in the world an hour ago, and was now the only place any of them wanted to be. Their daughter stopped shaking. Then slowly she just let go. She fell asleep on the ride home, her head against her mother's shoulder in the back seat, her breathing finally even and slow. The mother kept one hand on her the entire drive, just to feel her there, just to confirm it over and over again. She was here. She was breathing. She was safe. The father drove. At a red light somewhere on the highway, he looked in the rearview mirror. At his daughter sleeping. At his ex-wife holding her. Something moved across his face that he didn't try to hide. He pulled into the driveway. Put the car in park. Sat for a moment with both hands still on the wheel. Then he turned around. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything I didn't see. Everything I didn't do. Everything that put more on you than you should have ever had to carry alone." The mother looked at him for a long moment. Their daughter slept between them, breathing slow and steady. "Is there a chance?" he asked. She looked down at their daughter, then back at him. "There is always a chance," she said quietly. "But a chance is not a promise. And I need you to understand the difference this time." He nodded. He did. She was safe, shaken, but safe. Some conversations end in the car. Some follow you inside, up the stairs, into the quiet of 3 in the morning when the house has finally gone still, and you are alone with everything that was just said. That driveway conversation followed both of them. They carried it separately, into their separate homes, their separate beds, their separate silences. And even as they processed it, the world kept asking things of them. It asked them to walk back into the hardest room either of them had ever entered. The courtroom came weeks later, and what waited inside it would change the way both parents understood everything that had happened, and everything that almost had. The courtroom held everyone. The mother, the father, the school officials, the same ones who had been standing in that yard, having that conversation, watching those children. The police officers who had found her, and lawyers who were about to explain what this case actually was. There was not a dry eye in that room. Then the lawyers began to speak. What the parents heard was not simply the story of one little girl taken from one school yard on one Tuesday. What they heard was the outline of something much larger. A child abduction operation. Organized. Connected. The kind of network that moves children quickly and quietly across distances that make recovery nearly impossible. The lawyer paused and said something that both parents carried with them from that room and have never put down. If they had been one day later, just one day, she may never have been found. One day. The school officials sat in that room and heard every word. These were not careless people. They were not people who did not care about children. They had been standing right there, watching, present, attentive, and a child had still been taken. They carried that. They still carry it. Every one of them entered therapy, not because anyone required it, but because some things restructure you from the inside and you need help finding your way back. The mother and father held each other in that courtroom, not as husband and wife, as two people who almost lost the same child. After something like that, normal does not come back the same way it left. It comes back slower, in pieces, through small decisions made one at a time, what to try, what to change, what to protect, what to release. It comes back through the particular stubbornness of children who still want to laugh and run and grow even when the adults around them are still learning how to breathe again. The younger daughter came home changed in the ways that trauma changes small children, quieter in some places, louder in others, needing more reassurance, watching exits in rooms. The mother watched her closely. The father watched her closely. They communicated about her in ways they had not communicated about anything during the final years of their marriage. Directly, carefully, as parents first. The school question required an immediate answer. She could not go back to that building. The mother made the decision quickly and without apology. Her daughter would be homeschooled. What followed surprised everyone, including the mother. The younger daughter thrived. Away from the noise, the social pressure, and the particular anxiety that school buildings now held for her, something in her relaxed and opened. She learned at her own pace. She found her curiosity again. She finished her work ahead of schedule. A child who had been swallowed by fear discovered that her mind, given the right environment, was genuinely capable. The mother found a day camp, structured, supervised, safe. A place where her daughter could be around other children again without the vulnerability of an open schoolyard. It worked. The younger daughter made friends. She laughed again. She came home tired in the good way. She said, "Mom, no one knows about the kidnapping at camp." She was going to be all right. And then Carol reminded everyone exactly who she was. The invitation arrived the way trouble often does, wrapped in something familiar enough to feel safe. Carol invited the girls to a sleepover. Family, friends, people they all knew, familiar faces, a full house, the kind of gathering that feels comfortable before it doesn't. The mother had reservations. Carol had been talking about the divorce, about her, about things that had no business leaving family walls. She knew it. She had heard it secondhand enough times to feel it in her chest every time Carol's name came up. The girls wanted to go, though. They still loved their aunt. They still remembered the woman who braided their hair and stayed up late with them. So their mother smoothed down her hesitation, packed their overnight bags, and let them go. The evening started easily enough. Food, laughter, the comfortable noise of a full room. The oldest relaxed into it. The youngest followed her lead. Then Carol turned her attention to the oldest. Questions about school. Questions about boys. Delivered with a smile, in front of everyone, in the particular tone adults use when they want an audience for someone else's discomfort. The oldest felt it immediately, that specific embarrassment of being made into a topic. She brushed it off, smiled, changed the subject. She was 15 years old and had already learned how to hold herself steady in uncomfortable rooms. Then Carol asked the girls to wash the dishes. Not the other kids in the room. Not anyone else. The girls. While the rest of the family settled onto the couch and the movie started, the two of them stood at the sink washing dishes, listening to laughter drift in from the other room. The oldest kept her face even. The youngest stayed quiet. They finished, dried their hands, and went back to the living room. Later, the lights went low. Everyone spread out across the living room floor on pallets. Cousins, friends, the comfortable tangle of a family sleepover. Carol settled onto the sofa above them. The room was quiet, easy, almost safe. Then Carol looked down at the youngest and said it. "Oh dear, I heard you couldn't handle going back to school. Are you still not over the kidnapping?" The room shifted. Not loudly, just the particular stillness that falls when something lands wrong in a crowd and nobody knows where to look. The youngest said nothing. Her face went somewhere private and far away. Carol kept going, casually, conversationally, like it was a story that belonged to the room. Like the child it happened to wasn't lying 3 feet away on the floor. She opened it up the way people open topics at dinner, inviting response, inviting input, inviting everyone present to weigh in on the most terrifying days of a little girl's life. Then something moved across the youngest daughter's face that the oldest recognized immediately. The oldest reached across the pallet and took her sister's hand. The youngest got up, crossed the room quietly, laid down beside her sister. And then she started to cry. Not loudly, Not dramatically. The kind of crying a child does when she is trying very hard not to be seen doing it. Her shoulders shook. The oldest pulled her close and looked straight ahead. Her phone was already in her hand. "Mom, pick us up right now." 3 seconds later their mother's response came back. "I'm coming." Their mother was 2 hours away. She called their father before she started the car. The girls just sent a 911 pickup text. From Carol's house. He didn't ask questions. "Tell them I'm on my way." He arrived in 45 minutes. When the door opened, the oldest was standing with both their bags already packed. He carried the youngest to the car. She had stopped crying but kept her face turned into his shoulder the whole way to the parking lot. The oldest got in the back seat, buckled her belt, looked out the window. "I told her you'd come." He didn't say anything. He just drove. That night settled into the family the way certain nights do. Not as a memory you revisit on purpose, but as a weight you carry forward, present in the room even when no one mentions it. And while her little sister continued finding her footing one careful day at a time, the oldest daughter had been doing something quieter and just as necessary. She had been paying attention. For over a year she had watched this family absorb blow after blow. She had watched her mother carry things no one person should carry alone. She had watched Carol move through their home with authority she had never earned. She had watched her little sister come back from something that most adults in the room still could not fully name out loud. She was 16 years old, and she decided it was time to say something. She called a family meeting. She ordered pizza, because that is exactly who she was. Practical, direct, clear-eyed in the way that some teenagers become when life asks too much of them too early, and they choose to rise to meet it. She sat her family down. She laid out, with the calm authority of someone twice her age, exactly what was working and what needed to change. She talked about her sister. She talked about the household. She talked about what her mother needed and was not asking for. She was 16 years old, and she ran that meeting like a CEO. Her sister had her points to be made also. Carol heard some of it. Not all of it, but enough. The mother heard all of it. Something shifted in that household after that night, not because Carol changed overnight, but because the oldest daughter had drawn a clear line. Everyone in that room felt it, and no one crossed it. Lines drawn inside a family take time to hold. They require tending. And while the oldest daughter held hers with remarkable steadiness, the world outside their front door kept moving, and not always gently. On the father's side, things got harder before they got better. The tension at his job had been building for a long time, the kind of workplace situation where you feel the ending approaching, and the knowing somehow makes it worse. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The termination came. He lost the job. For a man who tied a significant part of his identity to his work and his ability to provide, that loss hid in layers. The professional layer, the identity layer, the father layer, the part of him that needed his daughters to see him as solid, stable, landed. He got back up. He found something better, a position that suited him more fully, valued what he brought, and gave him room to rebuild not just financially but professionally. The story of his career did not end at the termination, it pivoted there. He found a new relationship too. His daughters had opinions about that. They respected their father. They loved their father. They understood, in the way children of divorce understand these things, that their father deserved companionship and happiness. All of that was true, and this new woman broke the rules. Their words. We agreed that we would talk negatively about the other parent in our presence. The girls remained civil. They were not unkind. They held their position quietly and completely. Their loyalty, when it mattered, always knew exactly where it lived. 2 years carry more weight than their number suggests when you have lived them the way this family lived them. 2 years of rebuilding a household from the inside out. 2 years of two parents learning to co-parent across a divorce that had cost them both more than either fully admitted. 2 years of a youngest daughter rediscovering herself in the safety of her own home. 2 years of an oldest daughter growing into someone remarkable, shaped by everything she had carried and by every deliberate choice she made about how to carry it. Those 2 years had arrived at their destination. The mother had rebuilt herself from the inside out. She did the work, not because life gave her a comfortable moment to do it, but because she did it anyway, in the margins, while managing everything else. She found her footing. She found her person. The man she fell in love with saw her clearly. He saw her daughters clearly. He understood that stepping into this family meant stepping into a story already in motion, with people who had already decided what safety looked like and what it required. He asked her to marry him before the graduation. His moment, her moment, kept separate and clean from the milestone that belonged to her oldest daughter. She said yes. The father found out. He called. What passed between them in that conversation was something that 2 years of honest, committed co-parenting had made possible: genuine respect. He gave his blessing, not as a formality, as a man who loved his daughters and recognized that someone good had chosen to help raise them. That phone call meant everything, not to the romance, to the daughters. Their father's blessing meant the two most important people in their world had chosen, despite everything, to protect the family that still existed even after the marriage ended. Before graduation, one more thing needed to happen. Carol came with an apology. It arrived the way apologies do when they come late, genuine in intention, unable to return what the time had cost. She said she was sorry. She meant it. The mother received it with the grace she had always extended more freely than most people deserved. The oldest daughter received it differently. She was 17 years old, weeks away from delivering a graduation speech. She had held her sister on a pallet on a floor at midnight. She had called a family meeting and ordered pizza. She had watched her mother hold everything together. She had watched a courtroom full of adults break down over what almost happened to her little sister. She looked at her aunt and said what she had decided long before that moment arrived. I am going away to college, and my sister will not be spending any alone time with you. Ever. You are not a safe adult. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just true. 17 years old, and she delivered that verdict with the clarity and finality of someone who had done the work of deciding it long before the words left her mouth. Carol had positioned herself as the authority in this family for 2 years. The oldest daughter, in one quiet sentence, permanently reassigned that authority. The apology was accepted. The boundary held. Both things were true at the same time. And then, after everything, came the morning they had all been moving toward. Graduation day arrived the way earned things arrive. Quietly at first, then all at once. She stepped onto that stage the way she had moved through everything these past 2 years. Chin up, eyes clear, her full self present and accounted for. 17 years old. Valedictorian of her own story long before she was valedictorian of anything official. The family filled their seats. Her mother glowing. Her soon-to-be stepfather, steady and proud. Her father there, because he would always be there. Her little sister, 10 years old now, watching her big sister the way she had always watched her, like she was the map. She stepped to the podium. She looked out at her graduating class. Many of the students in that auditorium had younger siblings in the elementary school. Many of the teachers in that room had spent 72 hours praying, searching, and carrying a fear that had never fully left them. This community had lived that Tuesday alongside this family. They had felt it in their own homes, their own kitchens, their own nighttime silences. She knew that. She placed her open hand against her chest. She held it there for a moment, and then she began to speak. She told them that the chapter she was about to close had asked more of her than any chapter should ask of a teenager. She did not use the word kidnapping. She did not have to. Every person in that room already knew exactly what she meant. She talked about the 72 hours that had restructured her entire family. She talked about sitting in a courtroom and hearing a lawyer say the words "one day." She talked about watching her mother make decisions under pressure that most people never face, and make every single one of them with grace. She said this community had wrapped itself around her family during the worst days of their lives. Teachers who had searched, parents who had prayed, classmates who had shown up. She said she carried all of them with her forward into whatever came next. Then she paused. She said resilience is not just a word on a motivational poster. It is a decision, made over and over again, in small moments and large ones, when staying down would be easier and no one would blame you for it. She said her family had made that decision together. She said she was proud of herself. She said she was proud of every single person who had chosen to keep going when keeping going cost them something real. She pressed her open hand against her chest one final time, and she said thank you. The auditorium was silent for one full breath. Then it rose. The dinner afterward gathered everyone around a table that had earned its warmth. The mother sat close to her fiancé, his hand finding hers more than once across the evening, the quiet shorthand of two people building a life together. Her face held the particular glow of a woman who had come through something enormous and arrived on the other side knowing exactly who she was. The soon-to-be stepfather leaned toward the oldest daughter at one point during the meal. He told her that watching her deliver that speech was one of the most moving things he had witnessed in his life. He told her that stepping into this family had taught him things about strength he had never learned anywhere else. He said he was honored to be at that table. He said it simply, and he meant every word. The little sister sat beside her big sister all evening. At one point she reached over without saying anything and straightened the tassel on her sister's cap, which had shifted sideways. The oldest looked down at her. The youngest looked back up. Nothing was said. Everything was understood. Carol was present. She sat a little outside the center of the evening, not excluded, not featured. She had said what she needed to say before this day arrived. She listened more than she spoke. She watched this family with the particular expression of someone who understands, too late and too clearly, exactly what they almost cost. The father waited until the table had settled into its comfortable rhythm before he leaned forward and looked directly at his oldest daughter. He said he had watched a lot of young people navigate hard circumstances in his life. He said some use divorce as permission to drift. Some use tragedy as an excuse to disappear. He said she had done neither. He told her that through everything, the divorce, the kidnapping, the upheaval, the years of uncertainty, she had remained on the honor roll for her entire high school career. Every semester, without exception. He said proud was not a large enough word for what he felt. Then he said the things she would carry with her to college, through college, and past it. As you grow and go out into the world, I need you to know that there is absolutely nothing that would stop me from coming to your rescue. Call me. I promise you. I will answer. The table went quiet. The oldest daughter looked at her father for a long moment. Then she nodded. Once. Slowly. The way you nod when someone has just said the exact right thing, and you want to hold it still for a moment before the world starts moving again. Then her father said, "Your mother and I have been saving for a while to get you this special graduation gift. It's in the driveway." She erupted into screams, and everyone ran outside. A new car for their amazing daughter. The youngest daughter proudly handed her the keys. This was what they had built. Through all of it, this table, this evening, these people choosing one more time to be exactly what they had always been to each other. A real family. The older daughter heads to college in the fall. She leaves knowing exactly who she is, what she stands for, and what she will and will not accept. She leaves having raised herself and helped raise her sister through two of the hardest years either of them will likely ever face. She leaves whole. The younger daughter is 10 years old and thriving. Homeschool gave her back her love of learning. Day camp gave her back her love of other children. She still carries what happened to her. She will always carry some portion of it. And she laughs every day. She runs. She makes friends. She grows. She is going to be extraordinary. The mother and her fiancé build their life together with full eyes open, and a family already knit tight enough to hold whatever comes next. The father continues building. He lands on his feet every time because that is exactly who he is. His daughters know that about him even when they are testing him. Especially then. The school officials still carry that Tuesday. Some things you integrate rather than release. They carry it as a reminder of how quickly the ordinary becomes irreversible, and how presence is never just a body occupying a space, but a full and committed attention to what stands before you. The police officers who found her still work, still show up, still bring children home when they can. Somewhere in each of them lives the memory of a little girl in a hotel room and the particular relief of arriving one day before it was too late. This family did not come through 2 years of dissolution, crisis, and near catastrophe because they were exceptional people living exceptional circumstances. They came through because ordinary people, a mother, a father, 2 daughters, and the people who loved them, decided, over and over again, in small moments and large ones, to choose each other. That is what resilience actually looks like. The decision to rebuild anyway. The wife he never deserved. The end.